In the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, the long summer twilight lingered on. My name is Margaret Hayes, and for the better part of 40 years, my hands knew the precise, careful language of a librarian. They knew the delicate spines of first editions, the reassuring weight of reference tomes, and the slick, hopeful covers of children's picture books. I retired 2 years ago, trading the hushed reverence of the public library for the quiet communion of my own garden. Since my husband, Richard, passed away a decade ago, the universe of my heart had contracted, its gravitational center now firmly fixed on my son, Daniel, and his little girl, Sophie. Daniel is a good man, an architect whose mind is a beautiful, ordered place of blueprints and load-bearing walls. He lost his wife, Isabel, to a sudden illness that swept through her like a storm when Sophie was just a toddler. For 3 years, he was both father and mother, a solitary planet orbiting his tiny, bright daughter, with me as a constant, distant moon, offering a steady, reflected light. Then, a year ago, he met Vanessa. Vanessa worked as a receptionist at a dental practice downtown. She, too, carried the quiet weight of a past, a divorce that had left her with a son, Noah, just a year younger than Sophie. She had a gentle laugh and a way of listening that made you feel you were the only person in the room. Their courtship was a quiet, steady thing, a slow blooming, and after 8 months, they decided to marry. I confess I held my breath, the way one does before turning a fragile page, but my desire for my son's happiness was a powerful current, and I welcomed Vanessa and Noah with an open heart. The wedding was a small affair in the botanical gardens, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and new beginnings. 5-year-old Sophie, a miniature vision in a pale yellow dress, walked down the grassy aisle scattering rose petals from a small wicker basket. Vanessa, in a simple cream-colored dress, clutched Daniel's hand, her eyes shining with a hope so bright it was almost painful to witness. 4-year-old Noah, shy and overwhelmed, clung to his mother's side, a small, silent observer. Watching Sophie tentatively take her new stepbrother's hand, I felt a cautious optimism unfurl within me. A new family, grafted together from loss and hope. In the beginning, Vanessa's efforts were a study in earnest devotion. She learned that Sophie loved her pancakes cut into star shapes, that she was afraid of thunderstorms, and that her favorite bedtime story was about a brave little firefly. Sophie, who had been a quiet child since her mother's passing, seemed to slowly open up, a shy flower turning toward a new sun. She began to call Vanessa Mama Nessa. Noah and Sophie, with the effortless grace of children, forged an immediate, boisterous alliance, their laughter filling the rooms of Daniel's once quiet house. On Sundays, they would all come to my house for dinner. My home, a modest brick ranch that Richard and I had filled with books and love, would come alive again. Vanessa would bring a dessert, a perfectly rustic apple galette or a decadent chocolate silk pie, and Daniel would chase the children around the ancient oak tree in my backyard. From the kitchen window, watching them, it was easy to believe they were building something beautiful and strong. Vanessa treated me with a gentle deference, calling me Margaret, but with a warmth that felt like an embrace. But lately, a subtle disquiet had begun to thread its way into my peace. The threads were small, almost invisible. Sophie, when she'd visit me alone, seemed to have lost some of her newly found sparkle. She was more hesitant, her stories about her week less effusive. When I mentioned it to Daniel on the phone, his voice was tired, stretched thin by deadlines and the delicate art of holding a new family together. "She's just adjusting, Mom. It's a lot of change for a little girl." Vanessa, too, spoke of the challenges with a disarming frankness. "Sophie misses her mother sometimes, I can see it in her eyes," she'd told me over tea one afternoon. "I'm trying so hard, Margaret, but there's a part of her I can't reach. It's hard, not being her real mom." My librarian's mind, trained to categorize and understand, and my grandmother's heart, trained only to love, accepted this. I knew that families, like all living things, needed time to root and grow. I saw Vanessa's sincere efforts, her patient smiles, her star-shaped pancakes, and I believed that love and time were the only ingredients necessary. One sweltering July afternoon, as I skimmed leaves from the small in-ground pool Richard had insisted on installing years ago, I decided to host a pool party. Sophie adored the water, and I imagined the four of them, splashing and laughing under the Georgia sun, a perfect portrait of a happy family. I called Daniel with a suggestion. He sounded delighted. "That's a great idea, Mom. Vanessa and the kids will love that." I hung up the phone with a sense of purpose. I would support this new family with every fiber of my being. I believed in the power of love to mend, to graft, to create a whole from broken pieces. Watching Vanessa, I was sure that time would smooth all the rough edges. As the summer humidity gave way to the crisp, golden light of autumn, my vague unease began to solidify. The phone calls from Daniel grew more frequent, their subject matter narrowing to a single, troubling focus: Sophie. "Mom, Sophie's barely eating," he'd said one evening, his voice frayed with a helplessness I hadn't heard since Isabel first got sick. "Vanessa makes these incredible meals, spends hours in the kitchen, and Sophie just pushes the food around her plate. She wouldn't even touch the homemade chicken nuggets last night, and they used to be her favorite." I held the phone tighter, the plastic cool against my ear. A change in environment can affect a child's appetite, Daniel. How long has this been going on? A few weeks at least. And she started having nightmares again. Wakes up crying. Vanessa goes in to comfort her, and she clams up right away. A deep, weary sigh traveled through the line. I could picture him, rubbing his temples, the weight of his work and his worry pressing down on him. I knew the long hours his firm demanded, and it pained me to hear this new strain in his voice. "What does Vanessa say?" I asked, my own tone carefully neutral. "She says she's doing everything she can think of. She tries to talk to Sophie, to get her to open up. But she keeps saying it's just so hard, with no biological tie. She feels like she's walking on eggshells." A few days later, Vanessa stopped by my house alone. Noah was with a friend and Sophie was at her preschool. She sat at my kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea as if for warmth, though the day was mild. "Honestly, Margaret, I'm at my wit's end," she began, her voice small, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Sophie is such a sweet girl, but sometimes she looks at me as if I'm a stranger who has stolen her life." I reached across the table and laid my hand over hers, my skin papery against her smooth, youthful knuckles. "You are doing so wonderfully, Vanessa. These things take time." "I know, but it's different with Noah. With him, it's instinct. I know when to be firm, when to be gentle. With Sophie, I second-guess everything. Am I being too strict? Too lenient?" Just yesterday, Noah accidentally knocked over a tower of blocks Sophie had spent an hour building. She started to cry, and my first gut reaction was to defend Noah. I felt this awful pull, this terrible unfairness, because he's my son. She looked at me, her face a mask of distress. "How do I love them the same, Margaret?" "How?" Drawing on a lifetime of observing human nature from behind a reference desk, I offered what gentle counsel I could. "The role of a stepmother is one of the hardest there is, my dear. But your heart is in the right place. Just keep building trust, one small, honest moment at a time. Your love will get through to her." That weekend, I arranged to have Sophie for the day. It was ostensibly to give Daniel and Vanessa a much-needed day to themselves. Noah was spending the day with his paternal grandparents. Sophie was quiet. We baked her favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, her small hands moving without their usual enthusiastic vigor. We worked in the garden, snipping late-blooming zinnias. "How are things at your new home, Sweet Pea?" I asked, keeping my voice light as we arranged the flowers in a small vase. "Is it fun with Noah there?" She shrugged, her small shoulders rising and falling. "It's okay. A year ago, she would have bubbled over with stories." "Are you and Noah getting along?" "He's little," she said, a hint of something annoyance? Resentment in her voice. "Sometimes he gets my things messy." I chose my next words as carefully as selecting a rare book from a high shelf. "Is Mama Nessa being kind to you?" Sophie stopped arranging the flowers. Her face, usually so open, became shuttered. After a long moment, she said, "Yes. She's kind. But I think she likes Noah more." That evening, I called Daniel. I'm a little concerned about Sophie, I said carefully. But I'm sure it's just an adjustment period. Vanessa is trying so very hard. I know she is, Daniel said, his relief palpable. She's a saint, Mom. I'm so busy with this new high-rise project, I feel like I'm leaving everything at home on her shoulders. In mid-October, I had the family over for a Sunday roast. Vanessa arrived bearing a stunning pumpkin cheesecake, and the children tumbled into the backyard to collect acorns. On the surface, it was a picture of domestic harmony. Over dinner, Vanessa gave a glowing report. Sophie's appetite is coming back. She ate a whole bowl of my butternut squash soup last night. Daniel beamed. That's fantastic. See, Mom? Your advice must have worked. But I saw the flicker in Sophie's eyes. Her smile didn't reach them. It was a polite, practiced expression, something a child learns to wear like a costume. And I couldn't ignore the subtle shift in Vanessa's tone, the warm, liquid quality it had when she spoke to Noah, and the slightly brighter, more brittle edge it took on when she addressed Sophie. After dinner, as the children watched a movie in the den, Vanessa and I cleared the table. You know, Vanessa said, her back to me as she rinsed plates at the sink, Sophie called me Mama today. Not Mama Nessa. Just Mama. Oh, that's wonderful news, I said, and I meant for it to be. But a tiny, cold bell of alarm was ringing somewhere deep inside me. That night, long after they had gone, I stood in my silent kitchen, the scent of roast chicken and pumpkin spice still lingering in the air. Vanessa was trying. Sophie seemed to be adapting. But my years as a librarian had taught me to read between the lines, and my intuition, honed by decades of motherhood and nursing scraped knees, was telling me a different story. Children don't just lose their sparkle. There is always a reason for a change in appetite, for night terrors, for a sudden loss of joy. Were these simply the growing pains of a new family, or was I missing a crucial footnote? Looking out at the dark silhouette of the old oak tree, I knew I needed to pay closer attention to the story my granddaughter was unable to tell. On a Saturday in early November, an unseasonable warmth settled over Atlanta, a last, golden breath of summer before the chill. The temperature climbed into the high 70s, and I decided, on impulse, that it was the perfect day for the pool party I'd postponed. I spent the morning preparing, checking the pool's chemistry, setting out brightly colored towels, and making a large bowl of fruit salad and a platter of pimento cheese sandwiches, a Georgia staple Sophie adored. Around 2 o'clock, Daniel's SUV pulled into my driveway. I met them at the door. Daniel, in a faded college t-shirt, looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. Vanessa, wearing a breezy linen sundress, held Noah's hand. Noah, already in his tiny dinosaur print swim trunks, was vibrating with an excitement that was pure, 4-year-old joy. Margaret, this day is a gift, Vanessa said, handing me a container of still warm lemon bars. I was up late finishing a batch. They're Sophie's favorite, with extra glaze. I took the container, my eyes searching for Sophie as she climbed out of the back seat. My 6-year-old granddaughter was still in her jeans and a t-shirt, a small backpack slung over her shoulders. She walked with a strange deliberation, her feet heavy on the pavement. In the past, she would have been a blur of motion, racing for the backyard gate. Sophie Bug, it's Grandma, I said, kneeling to her level. I've been so excited to swim with you today. A small, watery smile touched her lips, but it didn't light her eyes. Hi, Grandma. Noah was already making a beeline for the pool. Water. Water, he chanted, his toddler legs carrying him in an unsteady dash. Vanessa hurried after him, laughing. Noah, honey, wait. Not yet. Daniel watched them with a fond, fatherly indulgence. That kid is part fish. He tried to jump into the fountain at Piedmont Park the other day. Vanessa nearly had a heart attack. We moved into the backyard, a familiar Eden of green grass and dappled sunlight. I'd set up a small pop-up tent for the children to change in. Vanessa led Noah inside. Come on, sweetie, let's get your floaties on. He giggled, a sound of pure delight. Sophie, let's get you changed, too, Vanessa called out. Sophie shook her head, her gaze fixed on the ground. My tummy hurts, she whispered, her hands pressing against her stomach. Daniel walked over, his brow furrowed with concern. You okay, sweetie? What kind of hurt? Sophie looked up at her father, her expression unreadable. It's just a little bit. I'm okay. But a flicker of fear crossed her face. Oh, for heaven's sake, Daniel said, his voice taking on a sharp, impatient edge that startled me. It's her new thing. Anytime there's something fun planned, she suddenly has an ailment. I stared at my son, shocked. The Daniel I knew, the one who had sat by Isabel's bedside for weeks, the one who had once stayed up all night rocking a feverish Sophie, would never have spoken with such dismissive coldness. Vanessa emerged from the tent and nodded in agreement. It's true, Margaret. She's been doing it a lot lately. I think the best thing is just to let her be. Not to make a fuss. Not to make a fuss. The words landed in my heart like stones. My granddaughter was not a fuss to be managed. She was a child in distress. After getting Noah settled with his floaties, Vanessa led him to the shallow steps of the pool. That's my brave boy, she murmured, her voice a soft caress as she eased him into the water. In that moment, the difference was stark, undeniable. The way her hands cradled Noah, the unguarded love in her eyes, was a world away from the bright, careful performance she reserved for Sophie. Sophie sat in a patio chair, away from the pool, her small legs swinging listlessly. She watched her family, a tiny, solitary island in a sea of cheerful noise. I went and sat beside her. Does your tummy really hurt, Sweet Pea? I asked softly. She gave a small, jerky nod. Yes, but I'm okay. Is there anything you want to tell Grandma? For a second, her lips parted. I saw the words forming behind her eyes. But before she could speak, Vanessa's voice cut through the air. Sophie, honey, time to hydrate. She appeared with a water bottle, her smile perfectly pleasant. About half an hour later, I excused myself to use the restroom inside. As I walked down the cool, quiet hallway, I heard a faint patter of footsteps behind me. I turned. It was Sophie, her face pale, her eyes wide and furtive. Sophie, what is it? She glanced back toward the sliding glass door, making sure no one was watching. Then, in a voice so small I had to lean down to hear it, she began, Grandma, actually. Daddy and Mama Nessa. At that exact moment, Vanessa appeared in the hallway, silhouetted against the bright glare from the yard. There you are, Sophie. I was just coming to find you. Her voice was light, but her eyes were like chips of ice. It's time for your medicine. The special tummy medicine. I frowned. Medicine? Is she on a prescription? Oh, just a mild herbal supplement the doctor suggested for her stomach issues, Vanessa said smoothly, producing a small white tablet from her pocket. It helps settle her nerves. Daniel knows all about it. Sophie looked at the pill in Vanessa's palm and visibly shrank back. I don't want it. Now, Sophie, it will make you feel all better, Vanessa cooed, but her hand clamped firmly on Sophie's shoulder. Come on, let's go to the kitchen and get some water. A cold dread washed over me. What had Sophie been about to say? And why had Vanessa appeared with such impeccable, unnerving timing? I'll come with you, I said, my voice firmer than I intended. Vanessa's smile tightened. That's all right, Margaret. We can manage. No need to trouble you. She gave Sophie's shoulder a gentle but insistent push. Sophie turned and shot me one last look over her shoulder, a desperate, pleading glance that pierced my heart. Then Vanessa was leading her away, her hand a firm grip on Sophie's small one. I was left alone in the hallway, the distant sounds of splashing and laughter from the pool feeling like they were from another world. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. My librarian's instinct for order, for finding the truth in a jumble of facts, was screaming at me. Sophie's fear. Vanessa's control. Daniel's chilling indifference. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture of terrifying clarity. When I returned to the yard, Daniel was tossing a beach ball to Noah. Hey, Mom. Where's Sophie? She's with Vanessa, taking her tummy medicine, I said, unable to keep the quote marks out of my voice. Daniel, are you concerned about this constant stomach trouble? He shrugged, his attention on his laughing stepson. Vanessa's got it under control. She's amazing with this stuff. I watched my son, a man I had raised to be kind and perceptive, and felt a profound sense of failure. He was so caught up in the dream of a new, whole family that he couldn't see the nightmare unfolding for his own daughter. A few minutes later, Vanessa and Sophie returned. Sophie's face was chalky, and I could see the sheen of unshed tears in her eyes. "All better now," Vanessa announced brightly, steering Sophie back to her solitary chair. She took her pill like a big girl. But I saw it. I saw the truth. My 6-year-old granddaughter was sending out a silent, desperate signal, and her voice was being systematically erased by the very people who were supposed to protect her. The party wound down as the sun began to dip below the trees, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple. As the family packed up to leave, Sophie turned at the car door and looked at me one last time. Her eyes were not the eyes of a child. They were old with a secret sorrow, and they were begging me for help. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. Sophie's pleading face was seared into my mind. On Tuesday, my resolve hardened into a plan. I called Daniel. "I'd like to have Sophie this Saturday," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Just the two of us. It's been a while since we had a proper Grandma Sophie day." There was a pause. "Sure, Mom. That's fine. Any particular reason?" "A grandmother doesn't need a reason to want to spend time with her granddaughter," I said gently. "Besides, it will give you and Vanessa a day to yourselves. You both deserve it." "That's true," he conceded. "Vanessa has been looking a little worn out. A day off would do her good." On Saturday morning, Daniel dropped Sophie off. Vanessa, he explained, had taken Noah to visit her parents in Macon for the day. Sophie carried her little unicorn backpack, her expression as muted and gray as the overcast sky. After Daniel left, I suggested we make chocolate chip pancakes. It was our special tradition, something we hadn't done in months. In the kitchen, Sophie's movements were listless as she stirred the batter, her gaze drifting to the window. "Sophie Bug," I said, kneeling beside her chair. "You know you can tell your grandma anything. Anything at all. If something is worrying you, or if someone has been unkind." She stopped stirring. The whisk clattered against the side of the bowl. She looked at me, and in her wide, dark eyes I saw a chasm of adult pain. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do you promise you won't tell?" My chest ached. "I promise, sweet pea. Grandma will keep your secret safe." And then, the story tumbled out, a torrent of whispered, painful words. "Mama Nessa, she's mean when Daddy's not home." My blood ran cold. "What kind of mean, Sophie?" "If Noah makes a mess with my toys, she says it's my fault for leaving them out. She gives me less dinner than Noah and says I need to watch my figure, but she tells him to have seconds. And at night, her voice broke into a sob. After Daddy's asleep, she comes in my room. She tells me I don't really belong here. She says my real mommy is gone forever and nobody wants me." Tears streamed down her face. "And that white pill, it's not for my tummy. It makes me sleepy and sick. But she gets mad if I don't take it." I pulled her into my arms, my own body trembling with a rage so pure and fierce it frightened me. I held her tight, rocking her gently. "Oh, Sophie. Oh, my brave girl. Thank you for telling me. It's all going to be okay now." "But Daddy won't believe me," she cried into my shoulder. I tried to tell him once, and Mama Nessa said I was making up stories to get attention. It was then, as I held her, that my hand brushed against her arm and I felt a small, hard knot under her sleeve. I gently pushed the fabric up. A constellation of small, circular bruises, bluish-purple and tinged with yellow, dotted her delicate skin. "Sophie, what is this?" I asked, my voice a strangled whisper. She tried to pull her arm away. I bumped it." "Did you really, sweet pea?" She shook her head, fresh tears welling. Mama Nessa was mad that I spilled my juice. She grabbed my arm. She told me to say I fell off the swings. My mind, the librarian's mind, went into a cold, clear mode of operation. I remembered my brief training in spotting signs of child abuse during a library outreach program years ago. I calmly asked her to show me if she had any other bumps. On her back, partially hidden by the collar of her shirt, were 3 thin, parallel scratches, angry and red. "The cat did it," she recited, the words hollow and rehearsed. "Mama Nessa said to tell Daddy the cat scratched me." The grief I felt for my granddaughter, who had been carrying this monstrous secret alone, was a physical weight in my chest. That afternoon, while Sophie napped, emotionally and physically exhausted, I took my phone and carefully, methodically, photographed the bruises on her arm and the scratches on her back. I documented everything. Then, with shaking hands, I called my son. Daniel, you need to come here. Now. Mom, what is it? Did something happen to Sophie? The panic in his voice was immediate. I can't discuss it over the phone. Just come. And come alone. An hour later, Daniel stood in my living room, his face etched with anxiety. I made sure Sophie was still sleeping upstairs before I spoke. Sit down, Daniel. And I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen to every word and not interrupt. I told him everything. I recounted Sophie's story, word for painful word. I watched his expression shift from disbelief to defensiveness and finally, to a dawning, sickening horror. No, he whispered, shaking his head. No, that's not possible. Vanessa loves Sophie. She's so gentle. She is an architect of lies, Daniel, and you are the foundation she has built them on, I said, my voice sharp with a pain I couldn't conceal. She performs for you. This is what happens when the curtain falls. But kids exaggerate. They make things up. Do they make this up? I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the pictures. A choked, guttural sound escaped his throat. He stared at the image of the bruises on his daughter's arm, his face crumbling. At that moment, as if on cue, Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. When she saw her father, a flash of pure terror crossed her face before she could mask it. Sophie, Daniel croaked, his voice thick with tears. Come here, baby. She crept down the stairs, watching him with wary eyes. He knelt and gently, so gently, took her small arm in his hand. He looked at the bruises, then up at her face, and his composure shattered. Oh, God, Sophie, he sobbed, pulling her into his arms. I'm so sorry. Daddy is so sorry. That night, Daniel went home to an empty house. I insisted Sophie stay with me. The next morning, he called. I confronted her when she got home last night, he said, his voice raw, hollowed out. She denied it all, called Sophie a liar, called me a fool for believing a child over her. Then I showed her the photos. She just stopped. She said, that girl was never mine anyway. She packed a bag for herself and Noah. She's gone, Mom. He broke down then, a man whose carefully constructed world had been demolished overnight. What have I done? How could I not see? You see now, Daniel, I said softly. That's what matters. Now you can start to rebuild. On solid ground this time. Can Sophie stay with you? Just for a little while? Until I can make the house safe again. Of course, I said, looking over at Sophie, who was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of a smiling son. I will always keep her safe. The divorce was swift and brutal. Vanessa's only demand was full custody of Noah and a clean break. She wanted nothing from Daniel, no assets, no support. She wanted, in her lawyer's chilling words, to erase this chapter completely. She and Noah moved back to her home state of Ohio within a month. Sophie began seeing a wonderful child psychologist, a kind woman named Dr. Evelyn Reed. The first few months were difficult. There were nightmares, a fear of closed doors, a flinching at sudden movements. But slowly, wrapped in the fierce, unconditional love of her father and grandmother, the bright, joyful little girl I remembered began to reemerge. 6 months later, on the first truly warm day of spring, Sophie stood by the edge of my pool. Grandma, she said, her voice clear and sure, I think I want to go swimming today. Watching her splash in the water, her laughter echoing in the sunny yard as her father chased her, was like witnessing a miracle. Look, Grandma. I'm a mermaid, she shouted, and I applauded through my happy tears. Daniel changed his life. He negotiated for more flexible hours at his firm, turning down a promotion to ensure he could be home for dinner every night. He never missed a bedtime story. Our Sunday dinners became a cherished ritual, the three of us together at my big dining table, Sophie chattering about school, Daniel looking at her with an attentiveness that was both heartbreaking and beautiful. One evening, as I was tucking her into bed in the room at my house that was now permanently her room, she looked up at me with serious eyes. "Grandma? Are we a real family now? Just the three of us?" I smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Oh, my sweet pea," I said. "Family isn't about how many people are in the picture. It's about the love that holds them together. You, your daddy, and me, we're the realest family there is." Daniel was growing, too. He was learning to forgive himself, to see that his desperate desire for a complete family had made him blind, but not malicious. He was becoming the father Isabel would have been proud of. When autumn came again, Sophie and I were in the garden, planting tulip bulbs for the spring. She patted the soil down with her small hands. "Will these flowers be okay all winter, under the ground?" she asked. "Yes," I told her. "They'll rest in the dark for a while. But they're strong. And when the time is right, they'll bloom again, more beautiful than ever." She looked up at me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Like us," she said. My heart swelled. My granddaughter, who had endured her own long winter, was beginning to understand the profound, resilient nature of life. That Christmas morning, there was a new bicycle under the tree. Sophie's gasp of pure joy was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Later that evening, the three of us sat on the sofa, bathed in the warm glow of the tree lights, a comfortable silence between us. My family was smaller now, its shape altered by storms and sorrow. But the love that bound us was deeper, stronger, and more true than anything I had ever known. I had spent my life among stories, but I had finally learned that the most important ones are not found in books. They're the ones we live, the ones we fight for, and the ones that, against all odds, we managed to rewrite into a story of hope.